Thank you for buying a Bhumi Diamond Sharpening Stone. This video is a basic guide to using your stone effectively to sharpen any of your knives. The stone has two sides, 400 grit, which is rougher, 1200, which is smoother. So you would use the 400 to define the edge if your knife is really blunt. And then you would use the 1200 to maintain and refine the edge to give you a very nice sharp edge. To use the stone, put it on a raised, non-slip surface, like a little wooden chopping board, so that you can ensure that the stone itself doesn't move around very much. If you have bought the Bhumi sharpening kit, then you would have a box complete with two magnets on the surface and a little piece of PU leather, which you can lay over the box so it doesn't get scratched. And then the stone clips onto it, and now you have a stable working surface for you to sharpen on. So the first stage in sharpening a knife is to understand the angle, right? Specifically the angle of the edge or the bevel. Now everyone talks about 15 degrees as being a really good angle to give you a razor sharp edge. But what is 15 degrees? So let's have a quick look at that. Let's lay the knife down. Now incidentally, this is a flat knife, so there's no taper. So let's lay the knife down. Put that there. So somewhere there, right? That's about 15 degrees. And I can just about put half a finger underneath the blade. Now, do we pull or do we push against the stone? Both ways work. I tend to prefer to teach people to pull when they're first using the stone. The reason is we need to maintain a constant angle when we sharpen a knife. And when we pull, it's easier to keep that constant angle. When we push, there is sometimes a tendency to roll. And if we do that, then we're completely altering the sharpening angle and we won't get a sharp blade. So my first suggestion to most people as they start out is to use a pulling action. Now the next thing to do is, if you notice, I lock my wrists. So this is just like playing tennis. In fact, what I suggest to people is move from the waist up. So keep your wrists locked, and that way the angle of the knife remains constant, and move your shoulders or your waist up and just draw the blade across the stone. You don't have to use a lot of force because the stone itself is very abrasive. The next thing is, which direction do you point the blade at when you are sharpening? It makes a difference because as you sharpen, you lay very fine micro grooves into the metal, and these micro grooves help the blade bite into whatever surface that it is that you're cutting. So let me demonstrate with this other knife that I have. I do a lot of slicing and slashing kind of cutting like this. So what I want my blade grooves to be is I want them lined up this way so that as I connect with the surface that I want to cut, they bite into that surface, right? Now if you're sharpening a cleaver or a chopper where the action is straight down, then you probably want to line up the grooves fairly straight this way, perpendicular to the blade. And if you're using a knife for cutting leather and pushing through things, then you probably want to line up the grooves this way. So that means that for me, when I sharpen, I hold the knife pointing in this direction. For a chopper, I hold it a little straighter. And if I had a knife which I use for push cutting, then I would probably hold the knife at this direction. Now, the object here is to sharpen right at the edge. How do I know I'm sharpening right at the edge instead of some other part of the blade? What we do is use a marker pen, draw a line right at the edge of your blade like that. Okay. And then when we sharpen the knife, whatever is erased or sharpened away, that indicates where exactly we're sharpening. All right, so let's have a look at that, and then let's start sharpening. Now if you now look at the blade, you notice that right at the edge, all the marker that was, the marker line that was there is all gone. So I've been sharpening right at the edge, which is good. So now I'm going to repeat for the other side. I won't use the marker this time for the demonstration, but I'll just draw the blade across. Okay, so to sharpen on the other side, I turn the stone a little bit so it's more comfortable for me. Hold the blade, same angle as before. Use 2 or 3 fingers depending on the size of the blade to put even pressure across the blade, and then push it across. Now this blade has a couple of curves. This is one, and then there's a very slight curve up here as well, what we call a recurve. It's not so easy and straightforward to sharpen here. So what happens is, to account for these 2 curves, as I sharpen this part of the blade, I'm actually holding the knife up this way, higher, right? So that I've got the 15 degrees along that line, and then as I go, the knife comes down to 15 degrees along this line. And then for this last bit, because if I just draw it across here, it may not actually make contact with the stone, so I go to the end at the corner, and this corner helps to sharpen that part of the blade. So if you have a knife like this is the technique. If you have a straight edge knife, then there's no real problem. When you sharpen a knife, you bring the metal to a very fine point, and as you rub it, as you sharpen it along the stone, a little bit of that metal is going to curl over, right? And that's good. That means you're sharpening right at the edge, right? But you need to get rid of that bit of metal, and that bit of metal is called a burr. So we need to smoothen it out. And how do we do it? Well, we use something called a strop. Now, the strop is basically a bit of leather on a piece of wood. There are 2 sides to it. One is the hide and one is suede. So if you want, you can use the hide as it is. What I like to do is to use the sharpening paste or the honing paste that comes with the strop set, and then rub it and cake it onto the suede side till there's a lot of it. And what this does is, this polishes the metal, right? So the strop does 2 things. Number 1, it cleans up the burr that you have. So as you rub it along the strop, it cleans up that burr. And number 2, it straightens and polishes the edge of the blade, making it super sharp. So how do you use it? Now, after sharpening on the stone, take your strop, bit of honing paste, and then hold the blade at the same angle that you sharpened at, right? And run it along the strop, so away from the edge, right? So make sure you cover everything. You don't have to put a lot of force into this, just a little bit, both sides. And what this does is it cleans up any burr that may still be there, and also polishes the edge of the metal. Okay, so shall we now test and see if this knife is sharp enough? So let's get a bit of paper. Not bad. It could still be a little bit sharper, but I think you'll agree that that's good enough for 95% of what you're going to use a knife for. So that's it for the basics of sharpening, but there's one more thing. When else do you use your strop? When your knife is really sharp, the edge is nice and fine like this, and when you chop things, like if you have a cleaver and you're chopping bones, what happens is you'll find that if it's a nice sharp knife, it will go through the bone and the meat, no problem. But later, as you try and slice, you may find that the blade tends to drag and it doesn't give a clean cut. The reason for that is that very fine edge, as you chop, has become a little wavy because of the impact with the bone or whatever else, right? So a strop can be used then after chopping to align the edge again and to straighten it up and polish it so that the knife remains sharp. So if you've got a cleaver or any other knife that you're using for heavy duty chopping, and you've done some chopping and it feels blunt after that, don't waste your time sharpening again. All you need to do is strop your blade. So how do you care for your Bhumi Diamond Stone? As you use the knife, basically metal filings will clog up the surface of the stone, yeah, and you need to clean that off. The stone itself is basically a layer of hard plastic, 2 sheets of stainless steel with a polymer and industrial diamond. So the diamond is what is abrasive. All the little bits of metal filings will get stuck between the diamond and make the stone a little bit less effective. So to clean it, all you need to do is use a little bit of window cleaner. Get yourself a cloth and then spray onto the stone and wipe it off. And you can see that the metal has transferred itself onto the stone, onto the cloth. Yeah. Do the same for the reverse. There you go, nice and clean. So the reason we use window cleaner is because it evaporates, right? And it's important to keep your diamond stone dry. It won't rust, but if it's in a damp condition, what will happen is the polymers will weaken and the industrial diamond bits will fall off, right? Or they'll loosen, and you will find that the stone will not be as abrasive as before. So after cleaning it, put it somewhere to dry naturally.